Hi again, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, this is where we've been getting to spend our time. We've been looking out at the bay with every meal and first thing in the morning and last thing at night. This is the Valparaiso, I'm not saying it quite right, Valparaiso Bay, which is called, what did you say?
The jewel of the Pacific.
Yeah.
For a long time in the 1800s, we've learned that this particular port and this coast was a way that traders would go down to the southern tip of South America, get ice, and then sail it up to San Francisco with certain kinds of perishables for the 49ers who were off in the hills, the foothills of the Sierras, mining away for gold. And long after that, it became just this incredibly important port because before the Panama Canal, if you wanted to go from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific, you had to go around the tip of South America through the Straits of Magellan, and this was the first significant port you got to. And because of that, there were all kinds of people doing all kinds of business and making their fortunes and losing their fortunes, no doubt, but it's got a vibrancy that's really quite striking.
Yeah, a real history. You can see the presence of colonials, European colonials everywhere, built really large houses, and the streets are named for these folks. And yeah, and in the meantime, Chile has been through some challenging times with the Pinochet dictatorship, between the coup that overthrew the Allende government in 1973 and the restoration of democracy 17 years later. But in between, there was such terror. People were disappeared, people were publicly executed, murdered, exiled. So there's a lot of recovery that's going on here in Chile. And certainly we saw that in Santiago. We've just hit the 50th anniversary since the coup d'etat. And so it's a poignant time right now. And it has been ever since all of that. You can just feel it. So our theme this month is really community. Of course, we're thinking about that a lot here. And we're thinking about the full ecology of community.
And one aspect of community that's really striking in this city are the murals of magnificently colored and stylized art by dozens and dozens of artists across entire buildings. You can't walk a half a block without seeing beautiful art. And part of that art was devoted to remembering the terror of Pinochet and
protesting it
and expressing what freedom looked like to those artists, as far as what was the value of community and the value of heart and the value of connection. And it's really quite striking to see it on every wall, on every street you wander.
Yes, in the meantime, there's been COVID, and that's been quite disruptive to community. Shortly before that, there was another set of protests down here in Chile in October of 19, led significantly by girls and women early on. Girls were really initiated that protest around undemocratic, being uninformed and being imposed upon by increases, in this case in subway fares. But that just became symbolic and raised the necessity for the people feeling the necessity to say, we're not going back. We're not going back to this Pinochet stuff. We're not going back to that. And then boom, COVID came. And so the protests that needed to work their way through were quashed by the COVID pandemic. And that we've been seeing and learning more about, especially here in Valparaiso. Valparaiso, I had it so good there for a while, but I'm having trouble with it now. We'll call it Valpo, because everybody around here does anyway. And so that led to a lot of frustration and protest and and kind of it's hard to say the symptoms that show up in increased incidents of muggings and pickpocket and all of this sort of thing. So the people of Valpo are, we're seeing more and more evidence of their sadness about what's been happening with their city. And so we're thinking about all of this, and we're watching, and learning so much from Chile, and thinking about what is it about humans that moves us off of our nature and into this kind of conflict, when in fact we have this foundation in who we are as really the natural world. So we've been talking about that.
I think it's interesting you mentioned that the 50th anniversary just happened last fall of the Pinochet in 1973 coup against Allende, democratically elected Allende, I should say. And there was such violence and horror and terror with people being killed and disappeared and by the thousands and thousands and thousands. And the people of Chile do not want to forget that. And I think part of them maintaining community, maintaining the cooperation that we often talk about as far as being an innate and natural ability of humans, has to do with not forgetting, has to do with remembering that, it's possible to lose all that makes it work as a society. If somebody comes in and decides that they're going to take over and use
it's their way or the highway.
Yeah, their way or the highway. Then those community values and the potential of community, the potential of cooperation that we have as a species is gone, and they do not want to ever forget that it was not that long ago, gone for 17 years in this country.
And so terrifying.
Yeah.
And so we've been thinking, you look at any other species on the planet, and there isn't that kind of need to do that kind of dominance, and therefore there isn't the need to do that kind of protest. It certainly isn't sustained in any way. So for example, the mycorrhizae that we've all been learning about that serve as the networks for communication between trees, the networks through which the communication occurs. The mycorrhizae need what the trees create, and the trees need what the mycorrhizae create and can convey. And the trees don't ever suspect that the mycorrhizae aren't going to offer what it is they've always offered. And likewise, the mycorrhizae don't. I mean, we can just watch this in the behavior of these natural systems. This exchange just happens. It doesn't have to be regulated. It doesn't have to be governed. If anything, it's governed by the health of the soil, the amount of rainfall, the conditions that make up the ecological system.
Yeah, there really isn't in nature for the most part, this urge to hoard. Other species don't have I've got mine, I want more, and to heck with you. It's an economy of nature. It's an exchange, a rhythm of exchange, we sometimes say. And back to Chile, this is part of what the problem was under Pinochet. Everything was privatized, and some of it still is. Water is privatized. Education, including elementary school, has been privatized. And
all the way through.
Yeah, and in the case of water, we've certainly learned that with the effects of climate change, there's a very substantial increase in desertification, turning into desert, that which was productive land in the past, because the water isn't there anymore. The glaciers are melting, which certainly diminishes the possibility of farmers to use water to grow their crops. And that's going to create all kinds of issues, especially if there are a few people sort of wanting to hoard and control until everybody else is brought to their knees. And that's just not something that most of nature operates under. And we always have the opportunity as humans, with our mental capacities, to ask if that's what we want as well, to look around the corner and imagine what the consequence of certain decisions might be, including around climate change.
Yeah, this thing about the privatization of water has been really compelling. We had the opportunity to speak for, we hope, the next episode of the How It Looks From Here podcast with a photographer, a professional photographer, and a judge and lawyer, so all in one. She's all in one and he's all in one. And they spoke about, they helped us understand some of what Chile is facing. One of the things they described was a community in Chile where, relatively small, but where the wealthy people live in one part of town and the less wealthy people live in the other part of town. The wealthy side of town, where the people who live there actually own the water, have beautiful lawns and beautiful gardens, and it's beautiful and lush, and there is nothing. It's even moving toward desert in the other part of the community. This is a thing that natural ecosystems do not do. And so you referred earlier to our frontal lobes, and we're able to make these kinds of decisions. You know, frontal lobes, it's more complicated than that. But that's part of what makes it so that we make these mistakes in the first place. Mm-hmm. That we have this whole illusion of being separate from anything. And that illusion of separation, that experience of separation cognitively, has we talked about it, and most of human history was not dominated by that separate thinking, because we humans were very clear that we had to get along with the rest of the natural world or we weren't going to make it. And then came along, let's say, Tigris and Euphrates, and the capacity to do agriculture. And with that, slowly came these practices of dominance and practices of separation. And that's what's brought our species here in the way that we have an impact on the climate as a whole.
Yeah, I would also say that the stories that we used to tell, which is the fabric that holds a community, a society, maybe even a planet together. What stories do we tell about what's acceptable behavior? What lessons do we learn from the stories we tell? You know, there's a reason there were so many, say, coyote tales, where coyote gets a little greedy and there's a consequence, mm-hmm. and that lesson was taught no matter where you were in the culture, how you grew up. In Africa, it was spider stories. Spider was too clever for himself a lot of times and got in all kinds of trouble. And so what are the stories that we're telling now? Will they lead us to a more sustainable way of life, or are the stories really about hey, whoever dies with the most toys wins? Mm-hmm. And we really can change our behavior and our commitment to doing the right thing in the face of something like climate change by virtue of what stories we're willing to tell and embrace.
Well, and one of the storytellers of Chile, beloved storytellers, actually died, 12 days after the coup. And that was Pablo Neruda. And yesterday we got to go sit in his garden and read each other his poems. And one of the things that was very striking to us was that he constantly uses earth imagery for his love poems, for all of his poems. Here's an example from, we put this on Instagram this morning, but we'll just read the end of it, from a poem called Your Feet. At the end, he says, "But I love your feet only because they walked upon the earth and upon the wind and upon the waters until they found me." And that's just one small example. He uses beautiful imagery throughout his poems.
That's very sad.
And he draws, in his story, he draws the natural world in.
Yeah, and that gives us not only a sense of this love relationship, but of the sense of place of these two people, what connects them, what is bigger than both of them, that binds them, that allows them to experience that love, and he uses the earth to express that. So that's a wonderful, I think, example of a storyteller, mm-hmm. Telling the kinds of tales that resonate with us, even if we're city dwellers. There is something enchanting about that larger picture, that larger set of connections that places us on the planet, or in a particular country or landscape.
And this man, Pablo Neruda, is just timeless. There's so much love for him in this country. And that is like, there is love for storytellers in all cultures. The storytellers are very important in the way that they keep us right-sized and help us remember that we really are in community with each other, and that we must tend to these social ecologies, and that we are not just in community in a way of being civil to each other, but that we really are entirely interdependent, and not just with each other in these human forms, but in all forms of life, and animate and inanimate, and everything, that we are interdependent with it all. And so this is just something that in Full Ecology we invite you to investigate, and each of us to investigate all the time, because there is this necessity for us to break the seductive hold of the separation myth. It's got us all. And so it's up to all of us to question that and to see what our lives look like in community outside of, in the kind of community that mycorrhizae and trees have, for example.
Yeah, we've often made the point that community is, you can look at it as an obligation, and in some ways it is, but it's also an opportunity for a sense of kinship that just warms the heart, the connection to everything else, everyone else and everything else, to believe in the reality, which it isn't a reality, how connected we all are. It isn't just, another set of obligations about what I have to do in my life to help in the climate change effort. It's an opportunity to honor what brings deep, deep joy, and that's the kinship, not just of our family and our friends, but of the whole wide world.
It makes me think that back behind us, you may be able to see some ships. This is an active port, a very active port, still the biggest in all of Chile. And Chile, is its whole coast is the Pacific Ocean. So that each of the people who works out there, all of those people have a profound respect for the sea, and in this case for the bay, but also for the sea, for the ocean beyond. And this is what we're talking about. Each of us has in our history these experiences that show us that the weather that people have been through recently up in the US that's been so harsh this winter, that show us that we are entirely in relationship with the whole of the natural world. And it's ours to be in respectful relationship and to be in loving relationship with all of that, even though the cold is a bit hard to take.
Yeah, even the cold you can love, you can. Yeah. After spending 40 years in it, and in my childhood as well. Yeah. Yes, it's brilliant, and the ecosystem that evolves in the face of that cold is magnificent, just as the desert ecosystems are brilliant in their own ways. Hey, we've been thinking a lot about a couple of retreats that we've got coming up in June in the beautiful Centennial Valley. Speaking of the North, Montana, one of the most beautiful valleys you'll ever lay eyes on. Where we're going to do a couple retreats.
Yes, the first one will be the week of summer solstice. You can go to www.fullecology.com and go to retreats and see the description of these two different retreats. The first one over the solstice is going to be focused on the full ecology and inquiry into who we really are and what we really want. And that we'll have some meditation, we'll have some writing, we'll have some collective inquiry, and we're also going to have the special treat of having Chef Oscar Yip with us, who will help us think about food in all of that, and help us see the the importance of our consciousness of food and being in the full ecology of who we are. And the second one will start the next week, and it will be a writing retreat for writers to come hone their craft.
Yes, and we have 30 books between us and lots of experience with publishing and craft, and we'll be focused a lot on that. And there is absolutely, I will guarantee you will emerge as a better, deeper writer at the end of this particular workshop. But we're also working on the perspective that you bring to your writing, the energy you bring to your writing by virtue of what kind of relationship you have to the world around you through the work we do in full ecology.
And there's no better place, well, there's hardly a better place on earth than the Centennial Valley. I don't know of one.
No,
And
it's just exquisite.
there's birds galore because we're right next to or in a bird refuge. It's a beautiful, beautiful valley. It's just stunning every time we're there.
You'll walk out of your cabin door in the morning, be right on the Red Rock River, and watch trumpeter swans floating by. This is the Valhalla of inspiration.
Yes.
It truly is. So
It's beautiful.
check it out, and we'd love to have you with us.
Beautiful mountains and rolling hills, and oh my goodness. Yes, so we're happy to tell you more about that. So please feel free to be in touch with us at connect@fullecology.com. But do check out the website and check out the descriptions and be in touch with us with any questions.
We're going to be deep diving.
Yes, we are.
In February.
The second Tuesday of February, and I'm telling you, I'm in Chile. I don't know when that is.
I don't know when that is either. But it's
But
the second
Tuesday in February, and we will be at 6 o'clock Mountain Time, deep diving more into this about community, and in particular, of course, because we've had this recent experience, we're having this experience, we'll be drawing on this experience and what we've learned here in Chile. So.
In the meantime, stay warm and happy, and be in good health wherever you may be.
Yeah, happy month of love, just because that's how it turned out.
Read a Pablo Neruda poem.
Yeah, do that.
Sometime in the month of February.
Yes.
You'll be glad you did.
Yes, you will. All right, and we'll see you then soon.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Take care. Bye.